Welcome to Sakshi TV special immigration show with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy from Law Offices of Prashanthi Reddy, PLLC. Please note that Sakshi TV now has 3 immigration shows every week. On Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy in English, Thursday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Chand Parvatneni, and on Friday at 6 p.m. EST with attorney Bhanu Ilindra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you're an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on this show is not a legal advice and is for general informational purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for the use of information. If you need specific legal advice, please contact the attorney directly. Ms. Reddy needs no introduction, but if you need consultation, please log on to reddyesq.com for contact information. And when you connect with them, don't forget to mention Sakshi TV. From the beginning, ReadyESQ.com has put a wealth of free information and online tools in the hands of the immigrant community and the benefit of US employers. The ReadyESQ.com site provides you with latest and cutting-edge information on US immigration law and policies explained in terms you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Today's topic is H1B alternatives. We will continue the knowledge session along with the news and updates on latest immigration, followed by Q&A. And before we get into the topic, you can call us on the numbers displayed on your screen for questions related to immigration and also ask for tips. Hi, Ms. Reddy, how are you doing?
Hi, Tony. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So it's festive. Everybody's in a festive mood today, but we're still going to talk about immigration because we want to celebrate immigration with everybody throughout the world. So before we get into the topic, Ms. Reddy, do we have any updates that you'd like to discuss with us?
Well, the update is kind of related to the topic. So
Right.
the update is that the H1B, they announced that last week that the H1B cap is closed for this year. The USCIS has announced that they've received 483,927 H1 visa registrations this year, which is I think about 100,000 more than last year. And they've selected 127,600, about 26% only have been selected this year, which is, if you look at percentage-wise, much less than last year because, again, the filings also have been much more. So the first round, there was only one round of lottery selection. Usually, like last year, we had 3 rounds. So we were expecting the same this year, but I guess what they're saying is that initially itself they accepted more than they needed to account for those H1s that don't get filed. So our cap is, the numbers that are actually available are 85,000. 65,000 is the H1B cap and 20,000 is the master's cap. So that's 85,000. So they selected 127,600. So they're saying that, they selected 35,000 more. So that accounts for those cases that were not filed. So they, I guess, therefore, they do whatever they want to. But I guess that's the reason behind not having, another pick from the lottery. So that's kind of unhappy news because a lot of people, the pick rate has been so low and a lot of people were expecting to make it at least in the next round. Last year, second round was almost as much as the first round. The pick rate was much higher after the second round. So we were expecting the same thing, but that didn't happen. So now what's going to happen now is most people have either received a notice that, their H1B has been selected for the cap, and with information, it's the notice contains information about where, you should file your H1.
What about the people who are selected and then who were not selected, and how does it change?
So those that were not selected will get a not selected notification that they'll just say that your case was not selected. Okay. Previously what happened is the selected people got the selected notice and the not selected people just had a submitted notification. It just said that your case was submitted. So now that's changed to not selected.
Right.
So that's what has happened. So last year there were about 308,000 applications received, compared to this year, as I said, 483. So that's almost 200,000 applications more.
Right.
So that's the nature of the beast. So there's not much we can do unless the Congress changes the laws or increases the cap or removes the cap. But this is really affecting businesses as well as individuals, and it's affecting the economy, I think, as well, because there's clearly not enough cases, H1Bs, to meet the jobs. And what's happening is these jobs are not getting filled. I mean, people are filing H1s because they're not able to fill their jobs with US citizens, permanent residents, people who are already here on some other kind of EAD. Especially in the IT segment, there is always a shortage of people. So a lot of jobs don't get filled and they get closed. And either the company suffers because they don't get filled, or they're outsourcing. So they're hiring people in India or Mexico or somewhere else, Philippines, to fill those jobs. So either way, whatever the way you look at it, US economy doesn't benefit from it. But there's a lot of politics involved around increasing H1B cap numbers, and I guess the politics triumphs over practical reasoning. So that's what's happening.
Right. Right. So, and is there any opportunity for all of the other business visa people, I mean, the work visa people to probably, is it the same process for them as well with the cap exempt and the application status?
Yeah, so all H1B cases have been decided. So there's no, if you have not been selected, you haven't been selected. You'll get a notice saying not selected. So all H1 cap subject cases are done for this year. So we have to wait until next March when the registration opens up again.
And how does it affect people with the T1 visa or the L1 visa, the TN visa, I mean, sorry.
If you're on a TN, you can continue to be on a TN. If you're on L1, you can continue to be on an L1. Of course, L1 has some time limits, but I think the people most affected, and of course the change of status people of L1 or T1, but also I think people who are filing from an F1 to a H1, or people who are filing, are coming for the first time from outside the country for jobs, they are affected. But so now I think we need to talk about the alternatives. So now what? Alternatives to the H1.
Right.
If H1s are no longer available, are there any other avenues for people who have not been selected? There are some avenues, they're limited, but I think it's worth talking about it because some people might benefit, and you never know until you know the law, you don't know whether you'll benefit or not. So it could benefit you. So one of the alternatives is something that we heard at the INA conference, and something that has been known to everyone, but there was no avenue to do this. So the best way to do this, if possible, is to file for a H1B cap exempt H1, meaning cap exempt organizations are non-profit organizations, universities.
Ms. Reddy, so sorry to cut you in between, but we have a caller.
Sure.
You want to take the caller first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Hi, you're on the show. Can you please tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Hello, this is Menka here.
Hi, Menka. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Vijayawada.
Yeah, please. You can ask Ms. Reddy your question directly.
Okay. So my question is regarding the L1 visa. Like, I have L1 visa has been stamped and budget is not available right now in the US. So like I also have B1 and B2. So can I travel on B1 and B2 visas because both the stampings are done?
So if I heard you properly, because there was some disturbance, you have a B1, B2 visa and you're going to apply for an L1 visa. So you want to travel on a B1, B2 since you already have it. Is that what she said, Tony?
Right, that's what she said. She said that she's already done with B1 and B2.
So I don't know if you're still there and you can, ask your question again, but
Yeah.
she
Hi,
did.
Menka. Are you still there? Hi, Menka. I can't hear her.
Yeah, we couldn't hear her. But anyway, if she's listening, then maybe her question was, if she comes on a B1, B2, can she then change to an L1 after coming to the US?
Right.
She can, you can, Menka, but you'd have to file an L1 application all over again. You'll have to file a change of status from a B2 to an
I
L1.
think we can try and hear her now. Hi, Menka. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. Could
Menka,
you please clarify your question?
we didn't get your question. Can you ask it again?
So the thing is, I got my L1 stamped, but the project is not available right now in the USA. But I have a B1 and B2 visa. So can I travel on B1 and B2
Oh, okay,
because
got
they
you,
both
got
are
you.
stamped?
Okay, yes, you can use either one depending on what your purpose is in visiting the country. You can either use the B1, B2, or you can use the L1. Since you're saying that the L1 there's no scope for using it because your employer doesn't need you. If you do want to travel for pleasure or then you travel on a B2. If you want to travel for business, you can travel on a B1. As long as that visa has not been cancelled, absolutely, it's valid to be used for the purpose that it can be used for.
Right. Thank you for calling, Menaka. I hope that really solved your question. So, Ms. Reddy, you were telling us about the alternatives to H1B, which is cap
Right.
exempt.
So,
Right.
as I was saying, one of the main ways of circumventing the H1B cap is filing a H1B cap exempt H1, that is filing through an organization which is cap exempt, which could be like a university, a non-profit organization, etc. So you file a part-time H1 through them, like for 5 hours a week, or it can be as low as 5 hours a week. So you'll just be doing that over the weekends or in the evenings. And then once that H1B cap exempt H1 gets approved, then you file a concurrent H1, meaning that you keep two H1s. You file a concurrent H1 for H1B cap subject. So to give you an example, if you're working for a consulting company, a consulting company will pay the organization because it's a program which the employer has to pay for. And you're getting real-time work experience in this program. So there are a couple of organizations, University of Massachusetts, there's Open Avenues Foundation, which offer these programs. And apparently the Open Avenue Foundation, which is, I met them at the ELA conference. They said that they had been verified by USCIS already. So hopefully, it should work. But so if you go through with this Open Avenues Foundation, file a H1B cap petition for part-time for 5 hours. Once it's approved, then you can file a second H1B concurrent, meaning two H1s at the same time. You're keeping two H1s open. And you can file a H1B concurrent cap subject H1 through your IT company and work as usual as long as you're working for both companies. So that seems to be one possibility. I personally have not explored it, but I've been told that it works. So it's something to look into.
Right.
So that's one of the alternatives. The other alternative is simply work for a cap exempt employer. So a cap exempt employer is an institution of higher education, non-profit, related to or affiliated to a higher education institution, non-profit research organization, or a government research organization. So all these organizations are cap exempt. So if you file a H1 through any of these organizations, you don't have to worry about the cap.
Cap, right.
Also, keep in mind that even if you're not working directly for them, if any of these organizations happen to be your end client, like if you're working in an IT job and you're working for a consulting company, but the end client is a hospital or a teaching hospital or a university, then you could still qualify for a H1B cap exempt. So keep that in
Right.
mind. It doesn't have to be a direct employer.
Right.
Um,
I think that's a very important tip for us.
Correct. A lot of people miss that, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The other one is filing for an O1 or a P1.
Right.
These visas are generally reserved for individuals who have extraordinary ability in their field, in the sciences or in the arts, in education, in business, athletics. So sometimes you can interchange the O and the H. Provided you can file, a person who qualifies for O might most probably qualify for H as well, and sometimes it could be the other way around as well. But since the standard for an O is so high, not everyone who qualifies for a H will qualify for an O. So that's something to keep in mind again. But definitely an O or a P can be filed in lieu of a H. And having an O visa, you get work authorization. Same as a H, you get it for 3 years at a time. And also, it's a basis for an EB1 green card because it's an extraordinary ability then. So an EB1 for Indian nationals is current. So that's the advantage if you can qualify for an O. Something to keep in mind. So in addition to an O, you could also file an L1. We've talked about L1 in the past.
We have.
An L1 is an intra-company transferee.
Transfer.
So an L1 allows multinational companies, that is companies who have businesses in, for example, India as well as in the US, to transfer their employees between the two companies, between their company in India and the US. So it could be a newly established US office, or it could be a US office that has been in existence for some time. So it's a good option for foreign employers seeking to, boost their US presence, boost their presence in the US or boost their presence abroad. It could be either way. But again, not everyone qualifies for L1. In order to qualify for the L1, you have to be working as an executive, or a manager, or a person with specialized knowledge. So you could qualify on that basis either for an L1A or an L1B. An L1A is better because that's multinational executive. That's EB1 again for the green card purposes. L1B is proprietary knowledge or specialized knowledge, and that is from a green card point of view, EB2 or EB3. You'll have to go through the entire labor cert and I-140 processes. So that's the advantage of an L1, but again, not everyone qualifies. But if you have your employer files for a H1 for you and you don't get through, but you're in India and you've been working for that employer for a year, and if you're working as a manager, then they can bring you here on L1 instead of waiting for the next H1 season and then again trying their luck out in the lottery.
Right.
So in addition to that, we also have the Tian Visa. And the Tian is for Canadian and Mexican nationals.
Yeah.
And the Tian Visa classification is, again, not for everyone. It's for certain occupations. But there are a lot of occupations that qualify for a Tian. And you could find this in the designated occupations on NAFTA, on the NAFTA website. Just to give you an example, software engineer or systems analyst and engineers are qualify as designated occupations in the IT space. So you could get a TN. The advantage of the TN is that, first of all, there's no cap. So there's no limited numbers. There's no limit on the number of TNs that can be approved or granted in a year. You don't have to file a petition with USCIS. You don't have to go to the consulate and apply for a visa. All you have to do is go to the port of entry when you're entering the US, and there they will decide, on your TN status. They will give you the TN I-94 there itself at the border. as long as you
Right.
qualify. So it's very convenient for both Canadian as well as Mexican professionals. Also, the time period taken is less. There's filing fee. There's no USCIS filing fee. There's no cap numbers. So it's excellent if you belong to those countries. Other country-specific visas are, if you belong to Singapore or Chile, you can file a H1B one. Now the H1B one has a cap, but the cap doesn't usually get used because it's only for nationals of Singapore and Chile. And the criteria is the same: specialty occupation. The job should require a bachelor's degree in a specific field. The employer has to show that they have a job for you. So same criteria as a H1, it's just that there's a separate cap for this and it doesn't usually get over. So that's a good option if you belong to Singapore or Chile. Now, if you're an Australian citizen, you may qualify for the E3. The E3 visa is also great because, again, there's no cap. So you can file this at any time. And just like the TN, you can you can't go to the port of entry and file it since there's no border between Australia and US, unlike Canada and Mexico. But you can just go to the consulate. So you don't have to file an application with USCIS and get an approval. You can just go to the border. You can just go to the consulate, apply for an E3 visa after getting, an LCA approved and, submitting a petitioner letter. So it's a much more simpler process. But the eligibility criteria is the same as it is for a H1. You have to show specialty occupation. You have to show that the job is a specialty occupation, and you have to show, that the company has a job available for you, but it's not as stringent as a H1 with reference to showing that, the employer showing that they have employment for you. So again, much easier, saves a lot of time because you don't have to go through USCIS. Saves the USCIS filing fee. So definitely an advantage over filing a H1. Now, some countries have the option of filing E1 and E2, treaty trader and treaty investor. This is not for Indians, but if you are an Indian national and maybe get nationality of another country like Turkey or some other country that you can go and see which countries subscribe to the treaty trader, the E1 and the E2 visas, which countries qualify. So if you get nationality from that country, and some countries it's very easy to get nationality. So, and there are people who will get you the nationality just for the sake of filing these visas. So it is definitely a process that people follow. Treaty trader, treaty investor is basically you're either working for an employer and they're sending you to the US to take care of their companies, to invest in their companies, to run and manage their company that they've invested in. So, that's again, good option for all kinds of businesses. It's not limited to any, one kind of business. The amount that has to be invested depends on, the amount that is required. So it's a proportionality test. There's no fixed amount. So that is, and then your dependents will be eligible to work as well. That's the advantage of the E2. Same as the L1, the L2s are allowed to work as well. So, there are definitely those advantages with the spouse being able to work, then two family members can work and, it becomes much easier.
Right.
Last but not the least is the F1 option. A lot of students apply for
Student
H1. They don't get through. So you can apply for CPT while you're going to school, curricular practical training. Of course, this depends on the school, whether they give you curricular practical training depending on the curriculum that they have. You have to show that the curriculum requires you to have training as well. So training should be part of the curriculum. It's like practical knowledge is required for the course to pass the course. So if that is the requirement and if the school submits the required documents for it, then it's possible to get CPT. Now, we could have problems with CPT sometimes, especially if it's a day one CPT, which means that the CPT starts from the first day of your master's or your bachelor's. Then that could be an issue. But USCIS will usually send an RFE, a request for further evidence, and they'll ask for additional documentation to show that the university, actually the college, needs, why they need a day one CPT program. If you're able to show it, I mean, we've so far have not had a problem. USCIS is not pushing back on CPTs, but you never know when they will. In addition to CPT, there's also optional practical training, which is OPT, which is granted after you finished your course for a period of 1 year for any kind of course that you do. And you have an additional period of 24 months or 2 years for STEM, people who are working in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math. So a lot of students start applying for their H1, as soon as they can, as soon as they finish their masters, and then they, continue to attempt to do it throughout their OPT and CPT time. So that gives them a few attempts, like 2 or 3 attempts every year. They try and do it and try to get in. There are a lot of people who are not able to get in, even after the 3 attempts, filing 3 years in a row. They then apply for another master's degree and then get another CPT, and that's how we see a lot of students struggling right now. Last option is, if you qualify for an EB1, as I said earlier, if you're a multinational executive, or if you have extraordinary ability, or you are not born in India, then you could apply directly for a green card and come from the US, come to the US on a green card, or change your status from an F1 to a green card. So that's
Right.
something that's often overlooked. So that's another option for getting a H1. An alternative to a H1. Otherwise, you just have to wait for the next year. We all know that. Wait for next April to
Right. There's always
file again
another
and
time.
try your luck again.
Right. We do, although we are glad you've always given us the best of options like you did now. There's so many alternatives to H1B. Some of them are cap exempt as well. So you're right. With that, we come to the end of the session, Miss Reddy. Thank you so much for always giving us nothing but the best. You've only offered the bestest of solutions for all of us. And it's like always, it's really a privilege to host you, Miss Reddy.
Same here, Tony. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you. You're watching Sakshi Live, and this is Thorini. Thank you.